The emergency dispatcher's voice crackled through the radio. Urgent yet controlled. All units. We have a 10 to 71 at 1852 West 63rd Street. Officer involved shooting. Repeat, officer involved shooting. Detective Vanessa Cole's coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. She knew that address. It belonged to one of their own, Officer Clarence Lawson, a rising star in the Chicago Police Department. Without hesitation, she grabbed her jacket and badge, her mind racing with possibilities. As Vanessa sped to the rain-slicked streets of Chicago's South Side, the wail of sirens slicing through the night, she couldn't shake the feeling that this case would be unlike any other she had faced in her 15 years on the force. Marcus had recently married his high school sweetheart, Alyssa Johnson. Their wedding, held in the very church where they first met as teenagers, had been the talk of the community. The entire neighborhood turned out to celebrate the union of two of its favorite children. Alyssa was everything Marcus could have hoped for, intelligent, compassionate, and fiercely supportive of his career. Where his intensity sometimes pushed too far, her warmth and humor balanced him. Together, they seemed unstoppable. The newlyweds had purchased a modest home just blocks from where Marcus grew up. His father, Clarence Lawson, a retired officer himself, couldn't have been prouder. He was often heard at the local diner boasting about his son's latest accomplishments. "That's my boy," Clarence would say, chest swelling with pride. "He's going to be chief one day. Mark my words." But beneath that picture-perfect surface, cracks had already begun to form. Cracks that would soon split wide open, exposing a darkness no one could have predicted. As winter gave way to spring, subtle shifts crept into the Lawson household. To outsiders, Marcus and Alyssa still looked like the perfect couple. They attended neighborhood barbecues hand in hand, volunteered at the local community center, and gave every impression of happiness. But those closest to them began to notice changes. Marcus, once known for his easy smile, seemed increasingly tense. His colleagues noticed he was working longer hours, volunteering for extra shifts, and burying himself in case files. "Everything good at home?" Lawson, his partner, Detective Terrence Miles, asked one night during a stakeout outside a suspected drug den. Marcus's jaw tightened, though barely. "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" Terrence shrugged, eyes still on the crumbling building across the street. "No reason. Just, you've been burning the candle at both ends lately. Newlywed life not all it's cracked up to be." Marcus forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow even to himself. "Nah, man, it's great. Just trying to stay ahead, you know. Can't let the bad guys win." Terrence nodded, but a seed of doubt had already been planted. Something about his partner didn't sit right. Meanwhile, Alyssa was fighting battles of her own. As a social worker in one of the city's most underfunded schools, stress was nothing new. But lately, the weight fell heavier. She lay awake at night, her mind racing with the faces of children she couldn't save, families she couldn't reach. Marcus's long absences only deepened her sense of isolation. And when he was home, he was distant. Their once effortless conversations had shrunk into long silences, broken only by the ticking clock on the mantel. One evening, Alyssa sat at the dining room table, absently pushing food around her plate. Her eyes drifted to the wedding photo on the wall. She and Marcus smiled back at her from a moment of pure happiness. She wondered, not for the first time, where that couple had gone. The sound of a key in the lock jolted her. Marcus entered, uniform rumpled, dark circles etched under his eyes. "You're late," Alyssa said, trying to keep her tone neutral. Marcus grunted in response, heading straight to the fridge. He twisted the cap off a beer with practiced ease. "I made dinner," Alyssa offered, gesturing to the plate gone cold in front of her. "Not hungry," he muttered, taking a long swig. Something inside Alyssa snapped. "Marcus, we need to talk. This can't go on. You're never here, and when you are, it's like you're a million miles away. What's happening to us?" For a moment, his eyes met hers, and she caught a flicker, pain, maybe even guilt. But just as quickly, it vanished, replaced by the same mask of indifference. "Nothing's happening. Alyssa, I'm fine. We're fine. Just drop it, okay?" He turned and headed upstairs, leaving her alone with her untouched dinner and mounting fears. As the shower ran above, Alyssa felt a chill deep in her bones. Something was very wrong in her marriage, and she was beginning to fear she might not have the strength to fix it. Little did she know, the true test of her strength was yet to come. By summer, the tension inside the Lawson home had only worsened. Marcus was gone more often, and his excuses grew vaguer. Alyssa, craving support, found herself leaning on Clarence. Clarence adored Alyssa, seeing her as the daughter he never had. With Marcus always away, he often stopped by with home-cooked meals or offered to help around the house. "You know, Alyssa," he said one afternoon as they sat on the porch sipping lemonade, "I worry about you too." Marcus has always been dedicated to his job, but this feels different. "I know," Alyssa admitted, eyes fixed on the condensation dripping down her glass. "I've tried talking to him, but it's like hitting a brick wall." Clarence reached out, patting her hand gently. "Give him time, sweetheart. Being a cop changes a person. Sometimes it takes a while to find your footing." Alyssa managed a smile, grateful for his kindness, but the deep worry lines etched into his face told her he shared her fears. Weeks passed, and she and Clarence spent more time together, sharing stories, laughing at old photos. In Clarence, Alyssa found the emotional connection she was missing from Marcus. One evening, as they sat on the couch flipping through an album, Clarence's hand brushed against hers. For a moment, neither moved. The air grew heavy, charged with something neither expected. Clarence cleared his throat and pulled back quickly. I should get going. It's late." "Of course. Thanks for stopping by," Alyssa said, cheeks flushed. As she watched him leave, a storm of emotion swirled inside her. Guilt, certainly, but also a longing she hadn't felt in months. She tried to dismiss it as loneliness, but a seed had been planted, and in the soil of neglect, it was already beginning to grow. Meanwhile, Marcus was fighting demons of his own. The cases on his desk grew darker, more twisted. He carried the victims' faces home with him, their stories haunting his dreams. One case in particular gnawed at him, a series of brutal home invasions targeting elderly couples. The violence was escalating, and Marcus felt the crushing pressure to stop the perpetrators before they struck again. Night after night, Marcus Lawson buried himself in case files, searching for patterns, connections, anything that might crack the investigation. His colleagues worried about his obsession, but Marcus brushed off their concerns. "I'm fine," he insisted, though his bloodshot eyes betrayed his exhaustion. "I just need to close this case. Then everything will be okay." But as the weeks passed with no real leads, his frustration grew. Marcus began snapping at colleagues, his temper flaring at the slightest provocation. When his captain suggested he take some time off, Marcus flatly refused. "I can't stop now," he argued. "We're close. I can feel it." What Marcus couldn't admit, even to himself, was that work had become his escape. At the precinct, surrounded by the rhythms of police life, he could ignore the widening gap in his marriage. He could pretend nothing was falling apart at home. But reality always finds a way to break through. And for Marcus, that reckoning was about to come in the most devastating way imaginable. The day that would shatter everything began like any other. Marcus left before dawn, leaving Alyssa in their too-quiet house. As she moved through her morning routine, that familiar unease settled over her again. Needing a distraction, Alyssa called Clarence, inviting him over for lunch. He agreed instantly, his voice warm and steady on the line. When he arrived with a bag of groceries and a bottle of wine, some of Alyssa's tension eased. They fell into easy conversation as they cooked together, laughter filling the kitchen. Over lunch, Clarence reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "You know, Alyssa, I hate seeing you like this. You deserve to be happy." Her eyes stung with tears. "I don't know what to do anymore. Clarence, it's like I'm living with a stranger." He squeezed her hand softly. "You're not alone, sweetheart. I'm here, always." Their eyes locked, and in that moment the air shifted, thick with unspoken tension. Before either could stop themselves, they leaned forward, their lips meeting in a desperate, hungry kiss. When they broke apart, breathless, guilt and desire tangled in equal measure. "We can't," Alyssa whispered, though she leaned toward him again. "I know," Clarence murmured, already fumbling with the buttons of her blouse. What followed was a blur of passion and regret. In their desperation to feel something, anything, they forgot one simple fact. Marcus always came home for lunch on Wednesdays. The sound of a key in the lock froze them both. Panic surged as they scrambled to compose themselves, but it was too late. Marcus stood in the doorway, shock and disbelief written across his face. For a long, suffocating moment, no one moved. The only sound was the ticking of the mantel clock, counting down to the inevitable explosion. "Marcus," Alyssa's voice trembled. "It's not what?" But he wasn't listening. His eyes, cold and hard, locked on his father. "How could you?" he whispered, voice raw with pain. Clarence stepped forward, palms raised. "Son, I'm sorry. We never meant for this." Something inside Marcus snapped. With a roar, he lunged at Clarence, fists flying. Alyssa screamed, try and pull them apart, but it was like trying to stop a freight train. No one noticed Marcus's hand reach for his service weapon until it was too late. The first gunshot thundered through the house. Alyssa felt a searing pain tear through her side as she collapsed backward, her hand coming away bloody. Two more shots rang out in quick succession, and Clarence crumpled to the floor, his eyes wide with shock. Then silence. Marcus stood frozen, gun still in hand, staring at the carnage. Horror and disbelief twisted his features. Alyssa, clutching her wound, looked up at him with fear and pity. "Marcus," she whispered weakly, "what have you done?" Her voice snapped him out of his trance. He glanced at the gun, then at the bodies of his wife and father. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone. "This is Officer Marcus Lawson," he said, his voice eerily calm as he dialed 911. "I need to report a shooting. 2 victims. Send an ambulance." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "And send a squad car. I'm turning myself in." As the sirens drew closer, Marcus sank to his knees, the crushing weight of his actions finally hitting him. He had sworn to protect and serve, but in one moment of blind rage, he had destroyed everything he stood for. The perfect life, the golden future, gone. When the first responders stormed in, Marcus extended his wrist for the cuffs he knew were coming. The story of the officer who caught his wife with his father would soon blaze across headlines. But for Marcus, Alyssa, and Clarence, the true cost of betrayal was only just beginning. News of the shooting ripped through the Chicago PD like wildfire. Officers who had worked beside Marcus for years struggled to reconcile the dedicated cop. They knew the man who had just gunned down his wife and father. Detective Vanessa Cole, first on the scene, felt the full weight of the tragedy as she entered the Lawson home. Inside, she found a sight that would haunt her forever. Alyssa lay barely conscious, bleeding but alive as paramedics worked frantically. Clarence lay motionless, slipping away despite desperate attempts to save him. And Marcus, once the pride of the department, sat cuffed and vacant-eyed in the middle of it all. "Marcus," Vanessa said softly, kneeling beside him, "I need you to tell me what happened." His eyes, glassy but suddenly focused, lifted to hers. "I killed them," he whispered. "I killed them both." Alyssa and Clarence were rushed to the hospital. Alyssa's injuries, though serious, were not fatal. She would survive, though scars of the soul would outlast the ones on her body. Clarence, however, succumbed to his wounds in the early hours of the morning. The death of a retired officer at the hands of his own son sent shockwaves through department and community alike. Reporters swarmed the South Side block. Neighbors hounded for scraps of gossip. Headlines screamed across the city. "Cop catches wife with his father. Opens fire." At the precinct, Marcus's colleagues were torn between disbelief and grim acceptance. Some refused to believe the man they'd admired was capable of such horror. Others, recalling his recent unraveling, wondered if they'd ignored the warning signs. Detective Terrence Miles, Marcus's partner, sat across from Internal Affairs, recounting every detail of Marcus's behavior in recent months. Yet deep down, guilt gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had failed his friend and missed the chance to stop a tragedy. "I knew something was wrong," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I should have pressed harder, should have made him open up to me. But the time for should-haves had long since slipped away. All that remained now was to gather the broken pieces and try to understand how everything had gone so tragically wrong. As the days passed and the initial shock began to fade, attention shifted to the upcoming trial. The district attorney's office, facing immense public pressure, announced that they would pursue the maximum penalty for Marcus Lawson. This is betrayal at the highest level, the DA declared during a press conference. A man sworn to uphold the law, to protect the innocent, instead turned his weapon on his own family. We intend to make sure justice is served. For Alyssa Johnson, still recovering in the hospital under police guard, the future seemed unbearably bleak. In one horrifying moment, she had lost her husband, her father-in-law, and her sense of stability. Lying in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't imagine how she would ever move forward. Visitors came and went, colleagues in the school where she worked, neighbors offering sympathy, but Alyssa felt distant, unable to truly connect. How could she explain what had happened when she didn't even understand herself? One afternoon, drifting in and out of a restless sleep, Alyssa sensed a presence in the room. Opening her eyes, she saw Detective Vanessa Cole standing quietly at the foot of her bed. "Mrs. Lawson," Vanessa said gently, "I know this is painful, but I need to ask you a few questions about that day." Alyssa nodded, bracing herself for the conversation she had dreaded. As she recounted the events leading up to the shooting, waves of emotion crashed over her. Guilt, anger, shame, and a deep, aching sadness. "I never meant for this to happen," she whispered, tears running down her cheeks. "We were just lonely. Marcus had been so distant, and Clarence was there." And her voice broke, the words dying before she could finish. Vanessa listened patiently, her expression carefully composed, though inside her heart ached for this woman whose life had been shattered in an instant. When the interview ended, Vanessa rose to leave. At the door, she paused and turned back. "For what it's worth," she said softly, "I'm sorry. No one deserves this." Alyssa managed a faint, broken smile, grateful for the small gesture of kindness. When the door closed, she turned toward the window, watching the sun sink slowly over the Chicago skyline. In that quiet moment, as the city slipped from day into night, Alyssa Lawson made a decision. She would survive this. She would find a way to move forward, to rebuild her life from the ashes of tragedy. The path would be long, filled with pain and obstacles, but she was determined to push through the darkness. As night settled over the city, 3 lives lay in ruins, forever altered by a single moment of passion and betrayal. Yet, even in the depths of despair, the first fragile seeds of resilience began to take root. The story of Marcus Lawson, the cop who turned his gun on his wife and father, would eventually fade from the headlines. But for those who lived it, the echoes of that fateful day would reverberate for years, a haunting reminder of the devastating power of betrayal and the unpredictable weight of human emotions. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. If you were in the place of Marcus, what would you do? Stay tuned for the next story, one you won't forget. This is Ruthless Realities. Until next time.